Well, welcome to today's program. You know, our childhood, good or bad, affects all of us. And today we're going to examine childhood memories, how they've affected you, and what you can do about it with Christian psychologist Dr. Kevin Leman. Well, Dr. Leman, it's great to have you on the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Well, I know I'm interested in this subject because I had kind of a rough childhood, and I'm sure there's a lot of people watching us that did also. Probably also a lot of people who had good ones, but why are childhood memories so important?
Well, they're sort of a microcosm of how you see life. I mean, of the hundreds of thousands of things that happen to a kid, why would you remember these simple little tidbits of life? Mm-hmm. What significance could there be? Well, it's interesting. There's what we call consistency between your memory and how you see life today. Bill Gates, for example, remembers making a deal with his sister for $5 for the unlimited use of her baseball glove. Donald Trump remembers taking blocks from his brother Robert and building a building with it. And he promised to give the blocks back to his brother Robert. But he enjoyed building the building so much he glued those little suckers together and refused to give them back to his brother. So Bill Murray, the comedian, remembers doing an imitation of Jimmy Cagney on the dining room table.
Wow.
And he said, Joyce, his father was a tough laugh. And Bill falls off the dining room table in the process, hits his head, and as he said, I just wanted to scream, crying out, but I saw my father laugh. And so there's a consistency between what we remember as a kid and how we view life.
That's interesting to me. Why do you suppose that we, like knowing I was going to have you on the show, I specifically took a little time this morning and thought, well, what are some of the key things I remember from my childhood? And of course, I was abused growing up and lived in an alcoholic, violent home. And so, I remember a lot of fear and just wanting to get out of there. But I guess I was just wondering, why do people remember some things and not others?
Well, because you reflect your life theme. Firstborn children, for example.
Which I am.
They remember the classic. It's right in my book. They fall off a bike. That's the first example I use. They'll think of the negatives more than the positives to begin with. In general now I'm talking about. And we just tend to view life from behind our very biased lens of life. In other words, you could have 3 or 4 siblings all remembering an event that everybody was witness to. But just like an automobile accident, put 4 people on the corner and have them report to the police officer what they saw, it's going to be different, isn't it? And so we're very selective of how we interpret the memory. And the thing that's interesting, I think, about memories is that memories aren't something that someone told you. Memories aren't something that came out of the photo album. Memories are something that you can attach a feeling to. And that's the litmus test. Is it a memory or is it something somebody told you? I've had fun making people laugh most of my life. Someone called me a humorist. I'm not sure what that really means, but my mother reported when I was a little kid in church that I got away from her. In fact, one of my early childhood memories is she put me in a harness and she had me on a dog run between an elm tree and a maple tree. And I said to her as an adult, I said, Mom, what do you think I was, part Rottweiler? And she said, well, you'd get away from me. Well, one of my things that she's told me about my life was I got away from her in church one day. And women would take their shoes off during church services. And at age 3, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I took Mrs. So-and-so's shoes and switched them with Mrs. So-and-so's shoes? So the woman in row 3 got the woman in row 6 shoes switched. Well, I don't remember that. That's not an early childhood memory, but it's consistent with how I lived my life as a youngster. I have a lot of other memories that would build the picture that I only count in life when people pay attention to me, which is a theme that a lot of adults are walking around with today in life.
Well, I know when I was in my 20s, I could not remember really ever being happy. Because I think when you grow up in a fear-based, violent atmosphere, no matter what's going on, even if what's going on at the moment happens to be joyful, you always have that overshadowing fear that Daddy's going to get mad, or Daddy's going to hit somebody, or Mom and Dad are going to argue, or you know, you're going to get abused again, or whatever the case might be. And I do have a tendency to, and I'm not really a negative person now at all, but it's because I've purposed to change.
That's right.
I would have been,
yeah,
because I had a lot of negative things happen to me, but I know for a fact that people can change.
Oh, they can change.
You don't have to be stuck in your past, but I think it is very interesting how your past affects the way that you view and see everything. So how can examining childhood memories help us?
Well, let's take a look at what you just said. The lens that you see life through in your 20s, as you tried to look back, even if it was a joyful day, it was a happy day in Joyce's life. Mm-hmm. Notice the dark gloom over it. Because that lens, that family atmosphere, it's like walking on eggs.
Yeah.
How many women today are walking around in relationships where they're married to a controller?
Yeah. Right.
And as soon as he explodes, what happens inside of her?
Right.
She recoils. There's women who would tell you growing up, they weren't abused, but their father just gave them the look.
Right.
And when they gave the look, they got it from dad, they clicked their little heels together and they tightened up inside.
Yeah.
And chances are today, they're a pleaser. Mm-hmm. They want everybody to be happy.
Right.
Why can't we all just get along? It's your fault because you picked the day for the family reunion and it rained.
Yeah.
You know, you become this pleaser where you just take on all kinds of responsibility for other people. But the walking on eggshells, the feeling that the trap door is going to fall out from underneath me shouldn't happen to kids, but it does.
Actually, the Bible has a term for it in Proverbs 15. Let me read it to you, actually, because it'd probably be something that you can help some people with right here on the program.
You have to run toward the fear. That's what people don't always get. And that nebulous, something's going to happen, that's free-floating anxiety,
right.
That's what people are running to shrinks for, Joyce, every day and popping pills for.
Or like I've learned to say, you have to do it afraid.
Yeah.
Which is running against it. Here's what it says. Proverbs 15:15. All the days of the desponding and afflicted are made evil by anxious thoughts and forebodings.
Right.
So even if you're having a good day,
right.
You can make it an evil day through anxious thoughts and forebodings. But it says, he who has a glad heart has a continual feast regardless of their circumstances. So it's really not life and what happens in life that makes us happy or sad. It's how we view.
It's the perception.
Yeah.
And see, that's the key to early childhood memories, is how do you perceive this? It's not reality. It's what's your perception. But when you grow up in that fearful environment where you feel like you're walking on eggs and something very doomful is going to come upon you, it colors everything you do.
Right.
And the problem is it turns into who you are. A writer once said that children are like wet cement. I never forgot that phrase. Children are like wet cement. Well, you know, if you ever watch anybody work with cement, these guys are really good. I mean, they can make anything. I mean, I marvel at people who can use their hands because I'm not real handy. I'm still memorizing the tools, so when my wife wants something, I bring her the right tool. But if you ever seen somebody work with mud, they call it mud. When they build a brick wall, they can actually take it on that trowel and they'll throw it. Mm-hmm. They're so good at it. But it's very malleable.
Right.
But children are like wet cement. In other words, in the first few years of life, one of the few things you'll get shrinks to agree on, okay, is that personality forms in the first few years of life. So how important are the words that you use, parent, with your kids? You know, all those things make a difference in what a kid's perception is, not only of themselves, but in relation to other people. And more importantly, if mom and dad are the authorities in the family, right, there's your picture of Almighty God.
How does the way the parents get along affect a child? Let's just say that a child is not personally abused, but maybe mom doesn't respect dad. Maybe she had a problem and she doesn't respect male authority, so her kids see her constantly putting him down. Or maybe he doesn't respect mom because he had a problem. How do the parents' relationship affect children?
It's daddy, daughter, mother, son. Mm-hmm. That's the connection. Daddy, daughter, mother, son. A mommy teaches her son all kinds of things about women and how mom relates to dad. Mm-hmm. Conversely, dad teaches those daughters everything about what a man's all about. Mm-hmm. So there's your basic trust. And you take a little kid who's 2 years old and say, jump to daddy, they'll do a free fall. Mm-hmm. You can put them to the top of this studio and say, honey, jump to daddy, they'll do a free fall. Mommy's dying watching this happen, but there's a 2-year-old going in, leaping into daddy's arms. Why? because I can trust them. Well, here's what happened to people like yourself, Joyce. Somebody said, you can trust me. And there you are as a young kid, and you take that leap, and the arms get pulled back, and you hit the floor.
Or they tell you all the time they love you, but what you're experiencing as love is painful and makes you feel dirty and steals your innocence. And, you know, we'll talk about this a little bit more after we take a break, but I realized about 15 years ago that I never got to be a child.
Oh, no.
I always had responsibility and felt like I had some kind of a burden, and so...
And the fear will rob you of that.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about that. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the program. Today we're discussing how examining your childhood memories may help you change your life. Well, Dr. Leman, we had a great beginning, but I'm curious to get into a little bit more of what we were talking about. So let's just continue.
Well, it's a fun topic when you think about it. These early childhood memories, these little strands of life mean something. And they mean something because they're telltale to how you see yourself as an adult as you grow older. How many people have this life theme in their life? I only count in life when I control.
Right.
When I dominate, when I win. I only count in life when I have people like me. Everybody's got to like me. There's your pleaser, the pleaser woman. She's much more female-oriented than male. Not many male pleasers. Yeah. There's only 4 in the United States who are not giving out their hometowns. Women would like to meet that pleasing male. Then there's the attention getters. I'm an attention getter. I admit it. I didn't see myself as winning. All I saw was I needed to have attention. Well, how did I get attention? I acted out in school. I got thrown out of Cub Scouts. I'm not proud of any of these things. I got dismissed from the 4th grade for a day. I won't go into detail on that one. Got thrown out of college for stealing the conscience fund, which is another long story. I mean, my life's a story. I mean, I met my wife in the men's room of a hospital as a janitor at age 20. So something obviously happened in my life. But I believed a lot of those lies. And see, I think a lot of people believe this about themselves. I only count in life when I dominate, when I control, when I win, when I manipulate.
Or for me, it was I only feel safe when I dominate, when I control. If I don't let, like, submission to any kind of male authority was a real challenge for me in the beginning, because any man that had ever made a decision for me always made a selfish decision, nothing that was going to help me.
Now that's based upon not only your early memories, but the early occurrences that happened to you, all the bad things that happened to you in life.
Right.
Those are indelibly imprinted in your life.
I'm so grateful that God promises to renew us and restore us and to reverse the bad things in our life. And actually, even the Bible says that God will give us double for our farmer trouble, and that He will completely turn around the shame of our youth. Let's go back to just where we were at before we took the break. We were talking about how our parents affect us,
right,
and how these childhood memories affect our joy today. So let's just say, like me, for an example, I never really got to be a child. I had responsibility for as long as I can possibly remember. And so I've had to learn to have a healthy child on purpose.
Well, you've also learned how to have fun as an adult, then, I would assume.
Yeah, right. Because if you don't, like my husband, I always say, he has a healthy child in him. He's a grown man, but he always had a good time. You know, I didn't know how to just lighten up and be lighthearted. And I had to make a big deal out of everything, because when I was growing up, that's the way it was in my home.
Well, how good are you accepting gifts from people?
I'm very good now. And, really all that's been reversed in my life. So I know that it can change. Yeah. I guess I just want to hear a little bit more for our viewers about why this childhood thing and the example that you're around affects people for so long.
It's that indelible imprint that's on your life. When people treat you as a second-class citizen, or they abuse you and use you, you walk away with messages like, I'm no good. I'm not worth living. These are the kids who cut on themselves.
Right, yeah.
These are the kids who try to commit suicide. They grow up in homes where they're not valued for who they are. They struggle with that.
That's
well,
right.
I always say, you know, if you want to find your way out of that morass in life, you have to understand the key to all this is forgiveness. But I tell you, you talk about something that's tough. Forgive somebody who worked you over in life.
Yep, that's right. You can only do it by the grace of God.
Oh, it's only through God's help can you do that. But in you work on it, and one of the things I write in my book is this, that you forgive and remember. We always say forgive and forget. No, forgive and remember. Remember where you were. And every day, you're reminded through the grace of God that you got a reason now to put a smile on your face and enjoy life. Because it's like this huge magnet that just pulls you back and say, you can't enjoy that, Joyce. You can't enjoy that. You're not worth that, Joyce.
Right.
And you have to remind yourself, hey, wait a minute, you know, through God's grace, you know, I'm a new guy here, okay?
Right. And I even find for me, after all these years, sometimes I will still start to react to something that's a childhood memory, but now I have enough of the Word in me that I can choose to act on the Word rather than react to a past memory.
I try to tell parents, you know, hey, don't react. Learn to respond.
Right.
You know, an 8-year-old says to you, I want a pony. A pony? Where'd you get that stupid? A pony?
Yeah.
Well, if a bird had your brain, he'd fly sideways. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Well, that's a put down.
Right.
A parent could learn to say, a pony. Can you imagine having your own pony? Can you imagine riding that pony to school in the morning? You know, waving to the kids who are walking to school in the morning? I mean, what's the big deal? You're the adult here. So you talk about how does this affect little Buford growing up in a family as he sees mommy and daddy.
Right.
How does mom treat dad? How did dad treat mom? Those are key fundamental things. So yourself as a woman growing up, when you raise 2 sons, how you rear those sons affects who they're going to marry.
That's right.
That's why a woman has to have a self-respect about herself and command respect, especially from her sons. You're doing your future daughter-in-law, Mom, a great service by holding your son accountable for the things he says or does in life.
Well, Dr. Leman, you talk here about the different types of lifestyles and how they are affected by childhood memories. And we can't get into them too deep because we don't have a ton of time left. But what are some of these, like the driver, the giver, the taker, the pleaser, the martyr, the charmer?
Well, the driver. Here's a kid who always tried to do his best. He brings home 5 A's and a B. What does his dad say? Hey, what's with a B?
Yeah, right.
You got that? See, if you're a flaw-picking parent or you grew up with flaw-picking, you're going to end up to be a procrastinator. If you grew up with a critical-eyed parent, now it doesn't have to be abusive, just a critical eye. A good guess today is you're the procrastinator who works in piles. You have piles all over your office at work. Your boss comes in and asks you to find something. You know exactly which pile to look in. You can find it with equal ease. Want to goof this person up? You move their piles. So all of these things, whether they're the controller, you know, the controller controls out of fear that somebody else is going to control me. That's not a good marital bet right there, ladies. Okay? So you go down a list. What else do we have there? What are some of the others?
Controller, I only count when I exercise power over those around me. The giver, I only count in life when I'm contributing to others' well-being.
Now that's healthy, but there's also limits there.
Yeah.
And that parallels the martyr who uses leverage of what he or she does. Usually it's she. Oh, Marge, I don't know how you do it with Harold working long hours and 4 children, you know. And she feeds off that thing. But there's nothing for her. She never gives herself a break.
Right. One of the ways I've learned to describe that, because obviously we teach people as Christians to be givers, and I actually really enjoy giving and making other people happy. But I've also had to learn not to be a rescuer. Right. You know, because many times I would get into helping people that maybe I was actually hurting them by helping them, and I think I wanted to rescue everybody because I so much wanted somebody to rescue me. And nobody ever did. And then I also think people can become caretakers, where they get all their worth and value is found in taking care of somebody else. But really, then there's a part of them that's full of resentment, because there's nothing left for them.
Yeah. So you replace the hurt and the fear in your life by being joyful in giving to other people.
Right. Exactly. And you have the taker, I only count when I'm receiving from others. The pleaser, I only count when I'm making others happy. The martyr, I only count when I give myself up nobly for a cause. And the charmer, I only count when I'm the center of attention.
Right.
So we're interesting, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And the fact that I came home from CBS one day in New York and did a spot with them, and I came home to my wife and I said, well, honey, how'd you like the spot? She said, oh, you were good. All right. Give it to me straight. I can take it. She says, did you have to blow your nose in your tie? And the floor director was doing this, and Harry Smith was interviewing me, and I knew we were out of time. And he said, by the way, Dr. Leman, we're talking about birth order. We never go around to your birth order. Where were you and your family? So I feigned blowing my nose in my tie as a way of saying I'm a baby of the family. I would do anything. Well, my wife, Mrs. Uppington, the firstborn, you know, she didn't think that was very cool. So she lectured me. She said, you're a psychologist. You're a professor. You came out of academia. What is wrong with you? What are people going to think of you blowing your nose? Well, it goes back to I was written off as a kid. I was a class clown. I had a sister who was perfect, a brother who was the football star, and me. And see, and an adult, here I am in New York doing a national show, and I'm making a fool of myself. See, you don't get too far away from that perception, that lifestyle, that theme that's in your life. And it can be used for positive things. Yeah. It can be used for negative things.
You know what is really good, though, is you know that about yourself.
Right.
And I think until we really are brave enough to know ourselves, we can never hope to have any balance in our life or control ourselves. Like, you know that you might have a tendency to maybe be funny when it's inappropriate or to joke when it's not appropriate. So at least you have the hope of getting that in balance. I know that I would have a tendency to control everything that's going on.
Right.
And so I can choose not to. And I can be very comfortable now not controlling, but I never could have had that freedom to not do it had I not realized and faced the fact that it was a real problem in my life. And I think one of the best things that we can do is to let God really help us know ourselves, the good, bad, and the ugly, because that's the only way you can ever hope to have balance.
Joyce, it was a teacher when I was 17 years of age. I graduated 4th in my class in high school from the bottom. And she pulled me aside. I didn't know it at the time. She was a Christian. And she said to me, she said, Kevin, did you ever think that maybe you could use some of these skills you have for something positive? Joyce, that was the first teacher that ever said to me that I had skills. And you look at your life. You tell me how many people impacted your life. I mean, you can count them on one hand, I tell you that. You're lucky if you have one person who loved you as you are.
Yeah.
You know? And it's the words that we choose to use with somebody can, like the rudder to a ship, can change the direction of a huge ship with a small rudder.
Yeah.
It's the words we choose to use with people that make a difference.
Right.
And be an encouragement to somebody. And again, I can count them on one hand myself. You know, there's very few who really impact your life. You know, when we hit the floor someday, you know, yeah, a lot of people are going to say, oh boy, did you hear about poor Kevin? Did you hear about poor Joyce? Then life's going to go on for them.
Right.
But there'll be a few who not only be crying, they'll be wailing because of that personal connection.
Well, Dr. Leman, this has been very interesting, and we're going to go back at it again tomorrow and talk about it from some different angles. I'd like to hear a little bit more tomorrow about the birth order and how that affects us. And so it was great to have you today, and we'll look forward to tomorrow.
My pleasure.
Well,